Hello everyone and welcome to another one of our videos. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the front shocks on a W140 S-Class. This is going to be on my 1995 S320 and we're going to be using part number 24-017060. This is not going to be the same part number for vehicles with electronic damping control. That's going to be a slightly different process, but this video is going to cover the process for both types as far as the mechanical installation goes. So what I'm going to do is take you over to the vehicle, show you how we're going to lift it up, what we're going to do to take the shocks loose, and we're going to go through the process with you. At this point, we're going to begin with the process, and what you're going to do to start is loosen the lug nuts on the vehicle, as well as take off the wheelhouse covers. Now from there, what you're going to do is use a 5mm Allen key to hold the shock rod in place and loosen the shock's retaining nut right here. And you're going to do that on both sides, loosening the wheel nuts as well as, the wheel bolts, as well as removing that nut. And then at that point, you're ready to lift the vehicle up. Now the reason that you're loosening that nut before you lift the vehicle is because the shocks in this suspension system are essentially the limiting straps. So if you were to droop out the suspension fully by lifting it up off the ground and you were to remove that nut, the suspension would pop down and it would be very difficult to put back into place, as well as potentially injure you whenever it does pop down. So this is the easier and safer way to do it. This is the way I recommend doing it. And what we're going to do is go ahead and take those nuts loose. I'm going to get the car lifted up into the air, and we're going to show you what to do next. Alrighty, as you can see, I have the nut removed. I used a 17mm socket with an impact. That may work for you, but you may need to use a 17mm wrench, open end or box end, along with a 5mm Allen key in the top of the shock rod here in order to hold it in place and keep it from spinning. Either may work. The wrench and the Allen key is the surefire method to make sure that it'll work. So at this point, we're ready to lift up the car. So what I'm going to do is get my lift underneath the vehicle, position it underneath the lifting points. There's 4 of them, front, back, passenger side, and driver side. And I'm going to lift it up, and we'll make sure that these drop out, and we'll show you what to do next. Okay, so you can see here we have the wheel of the vehicle off now, and it's lifted up. This is the bottom of the shock absorber, and you can see the bolt going through it. The head of the bolt is 19mm and the nut is 18mm, so those are the 2 sizes you're going to need to remove that. And up at the top, you can see with us pre-loosening it, it is free and clear of the vehicle. So this should be a very, very easy removal of this shock, and we should be able to drop the new one in with no problem. As you can see here, we have the old shock out with the new one sitting right next to it, along with all of the new hardware. If you buy the Bilstein shocks, they will come with new hardware for both the lower mount as well as the upper mount. And what we used in order to get this shock out in the end was on the bolt side, used a breaker bar with a 19mm socket and used an 18mm backing wrench on the back side, and we're able to break it loose using the bolt side using that breaker bar. So that's the method I would recommend for you if you're doing this job yourself. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put the new shock in. Installation should be the reverse, and I'm going to show you what the finished product looks like. Okay, as you can see, we have the new shock in place. We have a 5mm Allen key dropping down from the top in order to guide the strut rod into position, and we have this installed on both sides. So we are basically ready to drop the vehicle back on the ground. Now, one thing to mention is that on the bottom we have the hardware installed but not tightened, and that's because the bushing needs to be set properly. And that is done by tightening it whenever the suspension is in this neutral position, which is whenever the wheels are on the ground and the vehicle is at rest. So there's one of 2 things you can do to do that. You can either put the wheels back on the vehicle and set it down on the ground, reach underneath and tighten the bolt, or you could also jack up the hub into its neutral position and tighten it there. What I'm going to do is just set it back down on the ground, or potentially set it down on some race ramps I have, just so I have a little bit of extra room underneath the vehicle in order to maneuver and reach in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and we'll come back and talk about finalization of this whole process. Okay, so we're finished with the job now. You can see we have the nut installed on the top of the shock absorber, and we tighten the lower bolt while the vehicle is on the ground. It's very, very easy to get to, not too terrible of a challenge. Overall, the shock change probably is about an hour-long job if you have the right tools and you know what you're doing. It's really not too terrible, and it's one of the simplest ones I've ever done on a car. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.